So good morning. Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's also a little daunting because this is a sector I know very little about, or I didn't know a lot about until yesterday. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to try and level the playing field a little bit and talk about what we do, but I'm also going to talk about it right the way across the piece around skills and young people. And it was interesting to read on the voting that outreach and attraction and perception were not high on the list of things that were hitting the mark and things that you feel that you should be doing. So I'm going to hopefully show you a little bit to hopefully change your mind. We're primary engineer, you can tell by the slides. Bright, colourful. We are aimed at changing the perception of engineering in primary schools and secondary schools to some degree, but teachers and parents. You're not alone in the problems that you're facing, the attraction into the sector, young engineers, and I am talking specifically about engineers at this point. You're not alone. We work across sectors and we hear the same thing in every sector. How are we going to attract 500,000 young people in a short period of time? Where they're going to come from? Bottom line, you've probably got about 9 million kids in school at the moment. So I would suggest that we need to change the way that we talk about engineering to children and what your industry does and why they should come and work for you. But the only people that are going to be able to tell them about that is you. So when we look at this as a skills pipeline, what do engineers look like in the classroom? So if you cast the engineers in the room, obviously, if you cast your mind back, you probably look like that. You're having a great time building stuff. You're in primary school. You could also have looked like this. Now, these two turned up. So at our events, kids do like to get dressed up. It's pretty obvious who we are in this slide. The thing was that they brought this vehicle in a suitcase. They were completely engaged in the whole scene of it. The teacher came over afterwards and was giggling because these two were reprobates. They were the naughties in the class. And if you imagine a primary school teacher is your teacher for a year. So if you're not impressing that person, you're going to have that right the way through the whole of the year. So how do you change that? Very hard to do. These two went round everybody else in the class and made sure that they'd finished their work. They helped them, they advised them, they worked with them. That was something they didn't do before. So their perception of themselves and the teacher's perception of them changed. Way that we work is not one thing. We don't just do one thing, go into schools, come away. We don't do that. We have, over the last 20 years almost, developed a system by which we can reach most schools, most teachers, most children, and most sectors and engineers. And we do it through a series of programs, competitions, qualifications, and research. So if we look at programs first, the best way to have the impact is train teachers. Train teachers how to deliver engineering in a classroom. If you're really lucky, you can engage the engineers at the same time, so they know what the activities are in the classroom, provide all the resources so that there's no reason why school can't do it, and then have celebration events and classroom activities. This is a post from a school in Wales, and you can see what the kids have been involved in. The schools post a lot on Twitter. Parents watch Twitter and they get a lot of that kind of feedback. So we can see what's going on in the classroom and we can see the skills that the teachers are learning. Engineers are important in that environment because they get to meet a teacher before they meet the kids. So quite often in outreach, engineers are thrown into the middle of a classroom with a load of kids. You've got 30 kids running around, you've got a teacher, and you're trying to understand what it is you're there to do. By bringing the engineers along to the events or to the training before they meet the children, they get to talk to each other. They get to build a relationship. They get to understand why the other needs the other, really. And the engineer is then there to provide context to the project. why engineering is important, what they do as engineers, and then that can lead into the classroom. So it's a really important relationship and a really exciting day. With the celebration events, you've got the opportunity to bring everybody together. And this allows teachers to steal good ideas off each other, which is really important. It allows the industries where we work to host. So it could be anywhere from the AMRC, or it can be at GE, where they've got aeroplane parts lying about. That gives the children the opportunity to see an environment they wouldn't normally see. And when you think about why you are where you are, it's these little seeds that are dropped in along your educational life that actually points you in the direction you're going to be in, unless you're in a sector that's very hidden, and then you accidentally fall into it when you've already got past that point. So this is about laying those ground seeds and getting children to understand the progression opportunities. I mentioned before about sectors. We also work with the Department of Transport, and a few years back we designed a rail project, and I'm using this as an example of a sector project. So we started off with one company, Hitachi Rail, and with the time of that slide, so when we did our report, we had 18 partners. As of today, we have 33. And what the sector did was, similar to yourselves, they looked at it and said, we really need people in, but we can't do it alone. So we'll all come together and we'll raise the opportunity right the way across the piece. You've got this 500,000 people to find. And the idea of taking them from other sectors, well, other sectors are going to try and do the same. So really what we need is a groundswell that everybody sees engineering in schools as important and something that we should all do. And that way then you've got people that are choosing to come into engineering because they really want to do it, not because they've been forced down that pathway. So this project, from our perspective, has been hugely successful. We did a report. I've got a link at the end to the report. And it will continue to grow with what we call rabbit hole projects. So we have a main project that all the children and the teachers get involved in. But then what we wanted to do was to look at how do you create an opportunity for children to really run deeply into a project. So you imagine you're in a class and you've done this great rail project, you're really excited about engineering, you're about that high, and you're there, and the next day the teacher comes in and goes, and today we're doing Vikings. It's like, well, where did my engineering project go? And so what we wanted to do was create these little satellite projects where kids could go and find out more about the sector, more about the interests, and then develop it. And maybe they go into those rabbit holes and don't like it and come out and go and do something else. But for rail, they'll be tunnelling and signalling rabbit holes, and they'll get more and more complex the more and more you get into it. And it's that obsessive nature that we're trying to engender in young people, that they get that interest, really, that hook really early on. Our competitions are a way that we can reach everyone. So with programs, you're funded to reach a certain number of schools in a certain place. Pretty obvious. With competitions, we can make them freely available to anybody, anywhere, because we've got a national coverage, because it's centrally funded. Our largest one is, if you were an engineer, what would you do? It's basically that. We ask a question, if you were an engineer, what would you do? The competition is open to 3, and we'll say this again, 3-year-olds to 19-year-olds. We have split the country into 25 regions, and within those 25 regions, there is an exhibition awards ceremony, and every year group is judged in its own year group. The children are expected to interview an engineer. So we have online live interviews that are recorded. The best one, I think, last year was James, who was a Lego designer. The one that I liked the best was the kite engineer, Carl Roberts show. If you want to go on our YouTube channel, I strongly recommend both of those. Engineers also go into the classroom and are interviewed by kids. And that's the opportunity where you're able to share the problems and the challenges and the things that you do. And ask the kids to think about how you could solve them. You're not setting the question, you're giving the context to what you do to them. So there's a massive opportunity to share careers. I went through the archive and found these. So we've been doing this project since 11 years. So this one at the top is a device, so 11, and this is in 2015-16. That's a device that will rotate speed bumps so that emergency vehicles can get past them quickly. So they're connected digitally. This one in 17-18 is a car with detectors underneath that record potholes, send the data via GPS to the local council. This one in 18-19 is cars being charged at lampposts. And in 2021, this one was recovering energy from hot tarmac so that you could charge your car in your driveway. If you look at the ages, it gives you an indication of just how innovative children's ideas can be. And if I said that this year we had 76,000 entries and 52% of them were from girls, I'm going to include my favourites because I have to. This is Finley, and Finley designed a radio that sprayed water through it so that you could dance under rainbows. Controversial one, a satellite to deflect sunlight onto Scotland to cure rickets. Yeah. The way that these are processed, we get all these entries in, and we have grading days. We invite engineers to come along and read them, give them a grade, and every single pupil gets a certificate with that grade on it and their name. And that's coming from an engineer. And that makes a difference to people. That makes a difference to kids. They take part in it annually. They are planning what their idea is going to be. They're observational. They're looking for things that aren't broken to mend. Once we've got our shortlisted, we have the great and the good in boardrooms around the country choosing winners. It's so difficult that originally we had 2 winners per year group, per region, not based on gender, just the 2 best ideas. The judges found it so hard, we now have 2 runners-up in each category as well, so we've doubled the number that get certificates. The celebration events are public exhibitions, we invite parents, and the idea is that we have a conversation about engineering with those families. Quite often these events are in universities. It's the first time children will have been to the university, first time some of the parents will as well. So the impact of this one competition is huge on young people. It became something that we started to look at. So what's the next step? And within our competition, we invite some of our funders to make some of the kids' ideas. They prototype them. They do it with their young engineers, they do it with their graduates, and in universities they do it with technicians as well. So we designed this idea of the Primary Engineer Mac Robert Medal to celebrate some of the innovation that we were seeing out of the partners. This year we're in Glasgow, and I'll show you a little bit of some of the prototypes in a moment, but the event itself is quite prestigious. We have all our funders, our chief execs, our university partners, and importantly, we have very young children. If you look back at this one, this young lady over in the corner was 6. So she went on the stage at the Institution of Mechanical Engineers and got a gold medal for her design, which was a health bot. And the health bot was designed so that when you hugged it, it took your vital statistics in hospital because she was terrified about going into hospital. The university that built it, Sunderland, showed it to their local hospital and they asked them if they could build them 6. They liked them that much. So the first one that we had that became a prototype was the shopping trolley for the elderly, designed by Aidan, who had seen his nan struggling to get the shopping out of the shopping trolley and into the boot of her car because she was so tiny. So he designed it so it would lower, the flump would flick forward, he'd roll the shopping into the boot of the car. Job done. The next one that we took that we really, really enjoyed was this one. It's a flat pack wind turbine for refugee camps. Glasgow Cali built it, and 2 years ago got £170,000 from Innovate UK to test. So these things are getting off the drawing board, and children are seeing the chance that an idea that can start on paper can evolve into something much greater. And the book that we did last year celebrates a lot of these entries. Tellus were the first company that actually designed a project as a company. And they did the plant pot for a face, or a face for a plant pot. And they took it down to the kids' school to unveil, and kind of, at that moment, ta-da! And the kid looked at it and went, it's supposed to be blue. And they 3D printed it black. So they had to take it back and redo it. So you've got a really, really touchy, clients there that are very willing to give feedback. Data is like glitter. It's everywhere and you can't get rid of it. So one thing that we felt was missing in our portfolio was, how do we get kids to engage with data in a meaningful way that makes them empowered? So we devised the Climate Change Challenge, which allows children to look at data, find 3 things they would personally change, and change them. And we think that that's a great way of letting people argue, to present information. I'm watching the time, so I'm speeding up a little bit. So what's the impact? As my head teacher used to say, so what? I like, out of all these, pupils are better behaved in class because they're engaged, they're enjoying it. And if the skills that you need, you can't specifically define, the skills that you actually need are children to enjoy learning, to be curious, and to be resilient. And if they're those 3 things, it doesn't matter what skills you need in the future. They just need to be that. Our total impacts across the country, UK-wide, this year we've gone up to 117,000 pupils, 842 hours of pupil engagement. So when you're thinking about social value, it's incredibly high. And the engineers that we asked to help. So we have an engineer relationship manager that onboards the engineers, tells them how to get engaged, supports them to be engaged, links them to the schools, and makes sure that what they have, they're comfortable with. And as I say, or I've said in the past, if you can hold the attention of a group of 5-year-olds, no boardroom will ever hold any fear for you again. So as a way of developing young engineers and young personnel, it's incredible. We work with a large range of companies. We're very, very proud to be a partner member of LCRIG, and very much looking forward to talking to you more about that and how that might help in certain areas. And we have reports that you can find on our website. In terms of qualifications and research, just very quickly, we looked at secondary. And what we're seeing is that children are being pushed down STEM pathways. You've shown some propensity towards it. So, oh God, yeah, push all those other subjects out of the way, go down this path. And quite often kids are coming to the end of it and going, why am I here? Wanted to do that, but they told me I was good at this. Now I'm here. So what we designed was a course for careers leads to look at engineering in every subject. So you're bringing with you the music, the arts, the humanities, and carrying on with those subjects and bringing them into an engineering field, not to dropping them and just expecting kids to want to do it because they showed some propensity early on. And for my part as well, that allows us to look at the other things that you do. It's not just engineers that you need in the sector, it's the people that support the engineers as well, but they don't know you exist. So having that access to that wider variety of jobs and careers that you have, you're bringing in that wider variety of children, but bringing also those core skills that you would want to find in an engineer. 1 second, I've overrun. Favourite photograph of all time. I said they all get dressed up. These 2 girls got dressed up and they had this big thing around, and they couldn't hear a word you were saying because they had this round their faces. And I just love it. And it's not for the girls, it's the boy. And if you look, it's written all over his face. And the thing about that photograph is, if you're not telling the boys that girls can be engineers, then you're on the hide into nothing. You have to do 50-50. Everything has to be 50-50. The boys need to know that girls can be engineers just as much as the girls. And if you would like to know more, then please do give me a shout. Thank you very much.